Hey everybody, it's Dr. Karen, and today I am going to talk about the mental health crisis among graduate students and talk about why this happens and what you can do to safeguard yourself against getting into that downward spiral of anxiety and depression that is unfortunately so common among graduate students, especially during the dissertation or thesis stage. So there actually is some data. There was a study done in Nature Biotechnology that showed that graduate students are 6 times more likely to suffer from a mental illness compared to the general public. And the thing is that many of us start graduate school with this dream of having this fulfilling career and really this joy and this reason for starting the degree in the first place. And we ultimately want to have a career ahead of us that fulfills us. But then when we actually get into graduate school and get into the thick of it, we find that it can be incredibly lonely and difficult. And often we're thrown into these massive, overwhelming projects, and it sometimes feels like we don't have anybody on our side, and there's nobody really there that really gets it to talk us off the ledge when things start to spiral out of control. Even sometimes, sadly, our loved ones don't get it if they've never been in the same situation that we have. So they love us, they want to support us, but they're not always the person who can be there to guide you along the way if they're not familiar with your topic or if they haven't been through the same situation. And the thing is that really when it comes to graduate school, even though these statistics that I've shared with you about mental health and the issues among graduate students, that was taken from a study of graduate students in general. What we have found is that one of the most common triggers that really pushes people over the ledge is the dissertation or the thesis at the very end. And this happens because there are often long nights spent reading technical reports or articles, or we're required to just stare at our laptops, willing ourselves to write when we aren't really sure what to do next. And a lot of times we can feel really lonely without any guidance, and that can get really frustrating. And then when we are working a job on top of our studies, which, let's be honest, the reality is today, most of the times we have to, there's not a lot of time left for sleep and personal time. And the few hours that we do get to sleep, a lot of times we have so much anxiety and we have so much to do that we end up just staring at our ceiling with thoughts running a mile a minute through our heads. And sometimes we end up having no energy left for a life outside of work because we're mentally exhausted, which means that we eat like crap, we ditch our exercise routines, or any type of leisure activities are pretty much out of the question, or it seems like it. And then we can get really overwhelmed and shut down completely. So if you think about it, it makes sense that so many graduate students struggle with anxiety and depression. But the thing is that it doesn't have to be this way. There are ways that you can actually prevent this. And the thing is that if you are to the point, even if you've struggled with anxiety and depression in graduate school up to this point, the thing about being at the point of doing your thesis or dissertation, or even being in the middle of it, that means that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, even though it feels like that's not true. And many of us get depressed because it feels like we're really alone in this struggle. And we know that when we get to this point, it can be really scary because it's not the same as the rest of our coursework where we had built-in structure and accountability. And even that regular check-in that we have with our professor, or at least some type of relationship. A lot of times when we're doing dissertation work, we're kind of on our own and we might not get to check in with our advisor as much. So there's not that same connection that you have with traditional coursework. And this lack of support at the very end, as we know, that statistics show that about half of graduate students end up quitting when they're at this point because it just gets to be too much for them. And the sad part about that is that They just let it slip away when they're so close, which means that someone else gets their dream job that could have been waiting for them. So someone else is essentially living their dream life when they could have made it through if they would have had the right support. And when we look back and see why this happens, this anxiety and depression is actually part of the culprit. Because what happens is that we start to get anxious because we feel like we have no control over the situation. We're not sure what's to come, and we just get scared. And the fact that we get into that point of anxiety and depression, neurologically, that actually impairs our decision-making abilities. So the problem is that we get anxious because we're not sure what to do next. And because we're anxious, we're even less able to figure out what to do next. Being anxious in itself and having that feeling of loneliness and depression actually makes you less able to perform and write and get through it. So once you get to that point where you're struggling with anxiety, the risk of not finishing actually goes up substantially, simply because of that impaired decision making. So that's why it's so important, if you feel like you're getting to that breaking point, that you do something now rather than let it go on, because you don't want to put yourself into a mental state that makes it less likely that you'll be able to problem solve. And one of the best things that you can do to safeguard this whole process and to keep yourself safe from getting into that downward spiral is to get the right support up front before it even happens, or even if it already has happened. It's still possible to turn it around, even if you've been struggling for years. So if any of this sounds familiar, or if you're worried that it might happen, I want you to know that you actually do have more power than you realize, even if you have a chair that's maybe not as supportive and not giving you as much direction as you want, or even if nobody else in your life gets it. There actually is a solution, even if you've already been suffering from anxiety and depression and you're on the verge of giving up. It is possible for you to turn that around if you have an objective viewpoint, so that you can essentially go after that dream job. But the goal and the ultimate thing that you need is to have someone there for you that can support you throughout the process, that can pull you out of that cycle, so that you are able to get to the point of calm and creativity, so that you can solve problems creatively and get to the end of your journey. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to have the support you need during this end stage, when it is so likely for you to struggle, simply because of what we already know. And the thing is that when you're able to turn it around, when you're able to have a blueprint and you're able to have someone guide you through this, what it does is it takes that anxiety away, so that when problems come up, you're better able to deal with them. And you can do it from a sense of rational thinking rather than complete panic, which, as you know, we don't make good decisions when we're in the mode of panic. So all you need to do that is get the right support and have that blueprint. And believe it or not, once you get that support and you turn it around and you bring yourself out of that downward spiral, it is possible to not only finish and do an amazing dissertation, but actually enjoy it and reclaim that joy that you had when you started your program, when you were inspired to go back to graduate school. And it's also impossible to, even if maybe you failed at a couple points in the process, it is possible to do an amazing job and have the finished product be really an amazing work of art, even if maybe you've struggled along the way. So the bottom line is, if you're sick of letting anxiety and depression get the best of you, and you want to finally move forward and finish your dissertation once and for all, don't wait. This is the threshold point where it's really the make or break to whether you turn it around, or to whether you get stuck in that same stage and stay there for years before you graduate and let opportunities pass you by, or to where you significantly increase your risk that you won't finish. So you don't have to stay at that breaking point. And I would love to support you past it. And the way that we can do that is that I can support you in a free dissertation strategy session. So how this works is that we will hop on a call and talk through your situation and get you massive clarity on what's stopping you from moving forward so that you can figure out exactly what's keeping you stuck. And ultimately, that is the first step in you turning it around and getting what you need. So all you need to do to book a free strategy session with me is visit me at meetme.so/Karen Dudek-Brannan with Dudek-Brannan hyphenated. And all you can do is go ahead, and there's actually a link right below this video with that website I just said, so that you can go ahead and click on that scheduling page. You'll be taken to a scheduling page. You'll be able to pick a time that works for you, and you'll just have to fill out a short application to give me some information on your situation so I can best support you. So again, if you need help, don't wait. It is possible for you still to do an amazing dissertation, even if you're struggling. So all you need to do is book a free strategy session by visiting me at meetme.so/Karen Dudek-Brannan.